Good evening. Let's please sit down. I'll call this meeting to order, the Champaign County Board, Thursday, May 24th, 2012. The time is 7:03. Please turn off or turn down your cell phones to keep Mr. James happy. Roll call.
Richards. Here. Rosales.
Here.
Schrader. Here. Alex. Here. Ammons.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Benzel. Berkson.
Here.
Betts.
Here.
Carter.
Here.
Coert. Esri.
Here.
Holderfield.
Here.
James.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Kibler.
Here.
Kurtz.
Here.
Langenheim.
Here.
Maxwell.
Here.
McGinty.
Here.
Michaels.
Here.
Mitchell.
Here.
Mosier.
Here.
O'Connor.
Here.
Petrie.
Here.
Quisenberry.
Here.
Weibel.
Here. We have a quorum. Mr. Benzel and Ms. Court indicated they would not be able to make this meeting. Yeah, go ahead, just ignore us. Tonight's prayer is by D.A. Graham, and I want to point out that I think this is one of the best prayers I've ever selected. Wait until after I say it, then you can laugh. Shall we pray? In the quiet sanctuaries of our own hearts, let each of us name and call on the one whose power over us is great and gentle, firm and forgiving, holy and healing. You who created us, who sustain us, who call us to live in peace, hear our prayer this day. Hear our prayer for all who have died, whose hearts and hopes are known to you alone. Hear our prayer for those who put the welfare of others ahead of their own and give us hearts as generous as others, generous as theirs. Hear our prayer for those who gave their lives in the service of others and accept the gift of sacrifice. Help us to shape and make a world where we lay down the arms of war and turn our swords into plowshares for a harvest of justice and peace. Comfort those who grieve the loss of their loved ones, and let your healing be the hope in our hearts. Hear our prayer this day, and in your mercy answer us in the name of all that is holy. Amen. Amen. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the clerk please read the notice of the meeting?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on May 24, 2012, at 7 o'clock p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payment of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Moved by Mr. Betts, second by Mr. Carter. All in favor? Aye. All opposed, the motion carries. Seek approval of the agenda and addenda. Moved by Mr. Esri, second by Mr. Rosales. We'll be pulling item number 1 under highway. That's 12A1 because it has a clause that's not legal. Yes?
I would like to make a motion to strike or defer item 6 Part B to the Finance Committee.
Which item under finance?
6B.
6.
Or excuse me, 11B.
Is that from the consent? What page is that from?
That is, it's the Nursing Home Resolution 8118 approving amendment to...
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, motion to remove, sorry, it's under nursing home. Item 9B.
No, that's 11.
11B.
So it's 11, oh, sorry, you're right, thank you. 11B, okay. The motion by Jeff, second by Aaron. Discussion in keeping it or removing it. Mr. McGinty.
Just wondering why.
Mr. Kibler?
The question was why. First of all, I believe that there are other options out there besides this particular resolution. Second, I do have some concerns about what's in it and would like more time to digest.
Ms. Petrie.
Just an information question. Is there some timeline to put whatever in place to check on, set up on compliance?
Well, Mr. Scavato is here and can maybe answer that even better than I can, but this was vetted by the Nursing Home Board of Directors. They looked at that 2 months in a row and recommended adoption of this agreement. And compliance is something that is, impending. I can't really tell you if you want Mr. Scavato to answer that.
The motion on the floor is whether to defer it or not.
Well, that helps me know how to vote.
Well, again, we're not discussing, you can ask me if there's a timeline, you can say yes or no, I certainly can answer that, but you can't go into details on that.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, more appropriately, we could bring it to the floor, let him talk about it a little bit, then defer it if we want to get something out of it.
So did he say yes or no?
The question being...
Is there a deadline?
Is there a deadline?
Yes,
Mr. Scavato, could you just indicate by shaking your head, saying yes or no? Do we need to do this tonight?
ask him to come to the mic.
Come to the microphone here. Okay. The question is, are we under, is there a time pressure to do this tonight?
There's no time pressure to do it tonight.
Okay.
Okay, thank
There you
you.
go. That's the
Thank
answer.
you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Back to the bench?
No, I think so. Okay. Any further, Mr. McGinty?
Well, I may be crazy, but I tend to be someone who trusts the opinion of the very advisory board that we approved to oversee things like this. It seems to me that if the nursing home board has vetted this for 2 straight months and that Mr. Scavato is here, I don't understand the rush in trying to cut the conversation short to not have any more conversation about this, because if we're here, why don't we try to do the business at hand? I don't understand why it's a rush to cut the conversation short mainly. Mr. Scavato's here. He's up from St. Louis. We pay him, and so when he's here, why don't we make use of him? We can talk about this, everybody. And so I don't think that Mr. Kibler's motion is necessarily bad, but I sure would like to talk about it. So if we have to make a motion to waive the rules, to actually have a discussion about this, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. The nursing home board is a pretty informed board here. They know a lot more about it than I do, and I usually try to admit that, and I wish some other board members would as well. Mr. Chair, I don't understand the rush to be like, okay, let's just be done with this and let's move it on, because we've kicked this can a lot of times. We kick a lot of things down the road. Why not, when we have Mr. Scavato here, talk about this?
Again, the motion is to defer it. Ms. Bergson.
It's not on the agenda.
Or pull it off the agenda.
It's not on the agenda, then we can't discuss it.
That's
And I
correct.
think it's very important to
That's
discuss it.
Ms. Ammons.
I support the motion to defer it 1
It
week,
actually may pull off the agenda.
to be removed from the agenda for tonight, so that we would have more time to look at other options other than the one that's been presented.
Yes, sir. Quisenberry.
I think it may be necessary to defer this, but I'm going to wait until we've talked about it a little bit before I say that.
All right. Further discussion? Mr. Alex.
I agree. I think if we are going to look at alternatives, it'd be useful to have the benefit of the comments of the board members tonight. So I'll vote no on this, but I would be supportive of deferring it later if we still think that we need to.
Any further discussion? Okay, so I have a show of hands in support of taking it off the agenda. Show of hands of taking it off. I count 8 and motion fails. Okay, back to the main motion. Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. The date and time of our next regular meetings for the Committee of the Whole, actually that will be only ELUC, correct?
And facility.
And ELUC and Facilities on Tuesday, June 5th, 2012 at 6 p.m. in this room. And on the following Tuesday, June 12th at 6 p.m., we'll have Finance, Policy, Personnel and Appointments, Justice and Social Services, and Highway and Transportation. Then on Thursday, June 21st, at 7 p.m. is the regular county board meeting. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items which you wish to take off the consent agenda, which is in yellow?
Move approved.
Move by Mr. Mosier.
Second.
By Mr. McGinty. Roll call, please.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Ammons.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Bergson.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Esri.
Yes.
Holderfield.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Kibler.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Maxwell.
Yes.
McGinty. Michaels.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mosier. O'Connor.
Yes.
Petrie.
Yes.
Quisenberry.
Yes.
Weibel.
Yes, motion carries. Okay, public participation. Mr. Charlo, Harold Charlo.
Hello. Hello, my name is Harold Charlo. I live at 3610 North Lincoln Avenue in Urbana, and I had thought that I was done speaking at the county board. However, remarks made at the last committee of the whole meeting I thought were way out of bounds and were just too personal for us to take. I've been coming to county board meetings for 2.5 years, and during that time, many people have taken advantage of the public participation to address the board. They usually talk to an issue that is in front of the board, and their goal is to influence the board one way or another on that issue. However, at the last committee of the whole meeting, Joe Lamb came to discuss a land transaction he was involved with 5 years ago and tried to tie it into the Olympian Drive project, a project that the board made a decision on over a year ago. His only goal was to embarrass my wife and try to discredit her in, excuse me, in future interactions with the board. And he wanted to do it in public. He stated, and I quote, "I just want to refresh everyone's memory, including hers, that when he came to an agreement on the price, I was told that due to the Olympian Drive coming through, that the price of the land was going to cost more, and so we paid that price." This simply could not have happened. The following timeline was given to me by the staff of State Representative Chad Hayes. The capital bill, which included the $5 million for the Olympian Drive project, was filed, which means it was put on the public record February 6, 2009. It passed the Senate May 14, 2009, passed the State House June 30, 2009, and was signed by the governor July 6, 2009. The problem with Joe Lamb's statement is that he signed this contract for the purchase of real estate on June the 1st, 2007, 20 months before the Olympian project was even made public. To believe my wife had any knowledge of that is absolutely ludicrous. The facts about the sale are that a little over 5 years ago, Shirley Squire approached my wife about the possible sale of some Squire Farm property. A longtime friend of hers, Joe Lamb, was looking to relocate his business and wanted to buy property next to the railroad tracks. Shirley lobbied her sister-in-law, Helen Squire, and my wife on Joe Lamb's behalf. My wife and her brother reluctantly agreed, believing that it would solidify family relations. Sometimes it's better to go along to get along. Little did they know that it would be thrown in their faces time and time again, culminating with Joe Lamb's appearance at the committee of the whole. Joe Lamb also goes on to say, due to the same individual who gouged me for the price of it, it is interesting that even though he acknowledged that there are 3 separate owners of Squire Farms, and even though he wrote checks to each individual owner for their equal share of the sale, only my wife is singled out as being gouged. Let me read his statement. "I just wanted to refresh everyone's memory, including hers, that when it came to an agreement on the price, etc. When it came to an agreement on the price. When he purchased the land in 2007, it was an agreement. In front of the committee as a whole in 2012, it's gouging." Thank you.
Mr. Mark Schubel.
Hi there, I'm Mark Schubel. I live at 105 East Green in Champaign. So today we use the internet to make things simpler. You know, I wanted to find when this meeting was, how to get here. It took me a matter of minutes. I could find a map. It's easy. But we don't put that same care into how we educate our voters. There's no single place to go to find out who's running and to get an idea about what their views are. And this is a problem. People are being dragged in lots of different ways, and it's hard and difficult for many voters to really understand what many of, including the people in this room, believe. Before the last primary, I went online, went to the county clerk's office website, could find a nice ballot with everyone listed, but then I had to go out and separately find people's websites, try to understand what they think. And most, or I won't say most, but many of the candidates didn't even have a website. So I've been trying to build a site where you can come together and do that. You could find people, you could see what they believe, and compare them side by side. And I'd like support from the county board members separately, not part of any sort of fee to the taxpayers, to work on the site and bring it up so we can have educated voters and increase voter participation, especially at the most local levels of government, the ones that affect their constituents the most. Thank you.
Jeremy Bomberger.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a while. Mr. James, I missed you too. As I'm sure you all know, tomorrow is the due date for responses to the RFP for a needs assessment for Champaign County Corrections. Starting tomorrow, the Jail Space Improvement Project Planning Team will have about 4 weeks to review and rank the responding firms. They, and they alone, will then develop a short list of firms to be interviewed by the county board in open session. At the time when the selected firm gives its report, about 5 months from now, the first major step handed down to the attenders of the Planning of New Institutions, Taking Control of the Planning Process Workshop, NIC number 11J2102, will have been completed. The description of this workshop, on which the entire planning process for the remediation of the conditions at the downtown jail has so far been based, reads, owner involvement throughout the planning process is crucial to the success of the planning effort and, ultimately, the successful construction and operation of the new jail. Decisions made at the early stages of the planning process will affect the remainder of the project. The course teaches concepts through case studies, allowing participants to get hands-on experience in planning methods. The course focuses on the critical elements of planning a new facility, including collecting and using data, pre-architectural programming, site evaluation, project management, and determining staffing needs. So, when a member of the project planning team justifies this process by saying, this is how they told us to do it in Colorado, that is what they're talking about. The team, which has been in control of this process from the very beginning, without vote or authorization or oversight from this board, has followed as closely as possible a rubric created by the federal government for the express purpose of building a new jail. And it is this team, as well as the recently added board member Carol Ammons, which will begin ranking the firms who will provide the basis for the rest of this project. In light of these facts, I would like to remind the members of the board of two things. First, that 4 hours, 37 minutes, and 59 seconds into the March 6th Facilities Committee meeting wherein the RFP was approved, County Administrator Deb Busey confirmed that, and I quote, all members of the county board could have access to any of the responses if they requested it, responses to the RFP. I believe that each and every board member has the responsibility to educate themselves about the range of options on which they will be voting in June. The fact that it's hard and the fact that it's time-consuming are not excuses for uncritically following the recommendations of the openly biased project planning team. And second, that this process has faithfully followed a federal model whose explicit goal is control over the planning process and the construction of a new jail. I believe that this explains why the Community Justice Task Force has been repeatedly denied any formal influence over the planning process and why its operation has been slowed beyond any reasonable expectation. And I believe that the discourse in these chambers has been constrained because discussing the expansion of alternatives to incarceration distracts from the model. The notion that taking on $20 million in debt is not the best way to serve the inmates or the public certainly does not fit with the model. The notion that we should fix the downtown jail now and not let its inmates languish in deplorable conditions for 3 or more years until construction is finished on an NIC-approved new institution most definitely does not fit with the model. And the question of why more than half of the cells which the NIC trained you to build will be filled with your African American constituents not only doesn't fit with the model, it appears to be off the agenda entirely. And let me say here and now that the racial disparity has nothing to do with minimum sentencing requirements. It is most certainly true that the decisions made at the early stages of the planning process will affect the remainder of the process, and the board will start making those decisions tomorrow. The public will be watching every step of the way. Remember that all of these meetings are posted online. So I urge the board to expand their discourse, to consider the repair of the downtown jail independent of the biased planning process, and to reach out to their constituents on this issue. I wonder how many of your constituents know that servicing the debt that you're going to have to take on for this project may make their property taxes go up. Thank you for your time.
Christine Pearson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Champaign County
Could you move
Board.
the microphone up a little bit?
Oh, a little bit?
There you go,
Okay.
that's fine.
My name is Christine Pearson, and I am one of the owners of Squire Farms. I would like to offer my comments on the resolution before you tonight regarding the proposed traditional intersection for the Olympian Drive project. I attended the Committee of the Whole meeting earlier this month. It was curious to me that during that entire discussion, not once were the safety features of a roundabout intersection discussed by the committee members. A federal highway report shows that a roundabout intersection offers the following: a 90% reduction of fatalities, a 76% reduction in crashes that would result in an injury, a 44% reduction in overall crashes. I hope you would all agree that these statistics are worth considering. You have been told many times about the beauty and serenity of Squire Farms and the surrounding area. While this is true, I, for one, would be willing to give up a little bit of beauty and serenity if it meant keeping people safe. There is a lady I know that was seriously injured in a rural car crash earlier this spring. A young mother, she sustained a jaw that was broken in several places, a broken hip, a broken pelvis, injuries to her liver, spleen, and knees. She will be recovering from these injuries and unable to work for a very long time. Maybe if she was able to be here tonight, she could give you a different perspective of safety versus serenity. Please know that 2/3 of Squire Farm owners are in support of a roundabout intersection at Olympian Drive and Lincoln Avenue. I personally urge you to consider what a roundabout can bring to the area in terms of safety. Thank you for your time.
Is there any other public participation? Okay, we'll close that and move on to communications from the board. Any communications? Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had occasion to go to a committee meeting in the Vermilion County boardroom the other night, and I feel qualified now to say that I'm not in favor of spending a lot of money reconfiguring this room, but our sound system leaves a lot to be desired. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Mr. Kibler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to send some thank yous to Cook County, specifically O'Hare Airport. When coming through it this morning, they have a very fantastic memorial display of fallen Illinois vets over the past 10 years, and 6 of them come from this county. So it's a very, very moving and very appropriate memorial. So kudos to them.
Thank you, Mr. Kibler. Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. Just an update on the bill HB 6153, the protection of the Muhammad Aquifer from the Clinton landfill. That bill has been postponed and will be worked on over the summer. Hopefully we'll be able to focus and change enough opposition to pass that bill. I talked personally with Representative Mr. Barrickman, Jason Barrickman, who is in favor of HR 6153. So we're having bipartisan support on both sides of the aisle for this, for the protection of our aquifer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other communications? Okay, seek approval of the minutes for April 19th, 2012. Moved by Mr. Langenheim, second by Mr. James. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. On to the nursing home. Mr. Scavato, you have the floor.
No. Scott. You remember Scott?
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, and thanks for having us back. I'm Mike Scavato. With me is Scott Gima from Management Performance Associates. You'll be seeing quite a bit more of Scott and less of me as we move forward. And Scott's been with us for 17 years. He and I have worked together for close to 20, and I know you'll be very capably served. So before I get started, I just want to say that I know that on everybody's mind is the situation with the state and the, in particular, inability to pay bills and to restructure the Medicaid program. I'm sure you'll have questions on that. But I want to keep something in perspective. We're going to talk about the fiscal results, the results that we reported for the fiscal year ending November 30th, 2011, and for the first quarter of this current fiscal year. And I think you'll agree, these are positive reports. And I'm not going to deny the fact that things with the state are a mess. And we'll talk, I'm sure we'll talk about that as we get into questions. But let's get started with this thing, if I can do this correctly. A mouse click. Oh, okay. For those of you who aren't familiar with the terminology, a big part of our business is the presence of Medicare Part A. We also have Medicare Part B, which is the services that are rendered to everybody else that has not had a preceding hospital stay. And our biggest population is the Medicaid group. Oh, okay. All right. So, in the first quarter, which we'll define as December, January, and February, we had good census. We put up decent results, and this is for last year, the year ending November 30th, 2011. And what happened is when we got into the second quarter, we had experienced a period of low census. We didn't do very well. We didn't have good operating results. Census rebounded in the fourth quarter, and we did better. And there's no surprise there. If we have good census volume, we do okay. The big issue with census varying continues to be the dependency of the nursing home on hospital referrals, and that's the Medicare A business. That is indigenous to the business. There's nothing that we can do about that except continue to work the hospitals to get their referrals. On October 1st last year, the federal government implemented some program changes to the Medicare program, and chief among those was a rate cut. And if we had to peg it for an effect on Champaign County, I would say 15 to 18%. That's noticeable. That's very noticeable in a program of that nature. We were fortunate last year to serve a lot of people, and financially, we saw Medicaid volume escalating in July. And it did come back down again, but that's financially, that's clearly a negative because it puts us more dependent upon the vagaries of the state. We experienced a payment slowdown in 2011. roughly 120 days. Right now, payments are regular. We are about 60 days out on Medicaid, which is good. That's not bad. As you are in an expedited status. Not everybody is expedited. You are very fortunate to be expedited, and we are managing pretty well.
Mike, it says 90 days here. You said 60.
Right.
90. I think we're expedited is 90, but we're actually getting paid 60. Okay? And good pickup. IGT payments have been received. I know I've been in front of this group many times, and you've asked me, when is the IGT going to be resolved? And it was always just around the bend, you know, and it has been resolved, and we have been getting those payments. We were very successful in getting an expression of one local lender to participate in revenue anticipation notes, source of working capital. We're uncomfortable just having one source. We are still working this. It is a problem going forward, and there's no question saying that there's anything positive about that. That's a problem. We need to have access to working capital. We ended last year profitable to the tune of $62,000. So that's basically a break-even operation. When you consider the trough that we hit in the second and third quarter of the fiscal year, I'm going to submit that that's a pretty good result, because in the middle 6 months of the fiscal year, things were not looking good. We did receive some extraordinary payments from prior years. We received $765,000 for overpaid transfers. Now, Ms. Ammons, that's the number that you're always asking me about. Exactly, what is that liability going to be? How much is it? When's it going to be extinguished? That's what that number is. And we picked up about $483,000 from prior year Medicaid rather, and we also adjusted our bad debt. And it just happened at the right time of the year, so we were able to do that. So when you factor all of these things in, for fiscal 2011, the nursing home should be reporting a profit of almost $1.1 million. Looking at the cash that we received to include all of these back items that we were eligible for, we received about $188,000 for basically that's a difference in the Medicaid match. Right now, Illinois is at 50%, and the feds kick in 50%. Under the stimulus program, it went to 62%, and basically what happened is that we ended up getting $188,000 to recognize that. Straight IGT funds, we got $1.9 million. We borrowed $878 in tax anticipation notes, and we picked up 3 months worth of Medicaid, $895,000. So we ended up with almost $4 million in cash. We took the cash, we took a lot of that cash and reduced accounts payable. Many of you will remember that in the latter part of last fiscal year, our bills were getting high. They were climbing. We were not able to pay our vendors. And this money that we got from the IGT was used to pay those vendors down. And basically, we're running at about $1.1 million in cash. We continue to run that balance today. We want to keep the balance between receivables and payables and cash at about the same. Now we're going to move and switch gears. We're going to go to the current fiscal year, December, January, and February. So over here in the census column, you can see that we did pretty good, census-wise. We were hoping to get 190. We did quite a bit better. And you can see that overall, down here, we're net positive for the first quarter of the fiscal year. As of February 28th, we had $1.3 million on the balance sheet in cash. We owed $1.5 million. Some of you will remember that payables are easily 2.7, 2.8, close to $3 million. There's been a substantial improvement in the balance sheet, but there's no question that it's still weak. And until we can pull in more cash, we're going to have to continue to maneuver between accounts receivable and accounts payable. What we plan to do is keep most of our large vendors at 60 days on accounts payable. They're okay with that. Sure, they'd love to be paid within 10, but they know the dynamics of the marketplace. And if we can get them paid within 60 days, they're fine. Small balance vendors, we're not worried about that. They basically remain paid. We have received some additional IGT funds for July through November. We think they're IGT money, and it's hard to tell because we have been getting some checks from the state that don't have real good backup, but it looks like an IGT check. It kind of has all of the earmarks of an IGT check, and that's what we're going to go with for now. And eventually the state is going to give us some backup on this thing. It's not that we haven't asked them for that, and it's just that they're not getting to it, and they will not get to it for a while. But we think we picked up another $441,000 in additional IGT, and another 170, that's a little bit suspect on the documentation side. And we're going to use that to get the accounts payable balances down further. In this current fiscal year, it's a little bit different environment. Actually, it's a lot different environment because we don't have any tailwind that we can count on. We're not going to pick up any prior gains from 2011. Those are all closed out. So we are stronger on the balance sheet, but revenue-wise, we are not as strong as we were last year. We will see the nursing home operate pretty well with a higher census, and you'll see it struggle with a lower census. The last 2 months are not good months. We have not operated profitably for the last 2 months. The census has been down. And particularly with Medicare, there's no getting around that. That is the single factor that drops the revenue down. When I first put this slide together, we were wondering, are we in a pattern where we're going to repeat last year's census decline? And it seems clear that we are. And we saw a decline in March, we saw a decline in April. It's continuing to be down in May. And I would just posit to you that the census in the hospitals is also down. The activity that we're seeing there has declined as well. Financing working capital in 2012 this current year is a problem. We believe that Medicaid payment delays will return in July, maybe August. There's no telling, but I think we have to assume that with the current state of affairs with the state, that we should anticipate pretty strong delays. Now, we're planning on 10 to 12 months. That may not materialize. Let's hope that it doesn't, but I think I'd rather be on the prudent side and plan for the worst, right? And if we don't have to, if we don't have to borrow any more working capital than 3 or 4 months, that's better for the nursing home. In our planning, we have expected a rate cut for Medicare on the order of 5%, which is a little bit over $322,000. We have just learned with the passage of this Medicaid reform bill tonight, the Senate just passed it tonight, that the cut should be a lot less than this, on the order of about $90,000. That's still a very fluid environment. So please don't take that $90,000 to the bank. But right now, I'd take 90 over 300, which was this number down here. And I think that's all my slides. Oh, wait a second. Statewide, the industry, anybody that's dependent upon Medicaid is in for a very rough ride. It's not Champaign County. It's not Cook County. It's not Lake County. It's the state of Illinois. there's no question that short-term financing to access cash is going to have to be something that we get much better at. We continue to look at reducing expenses, and if you go back and look at our expenses over the last 3 months, they're not out of control. We need to boost our operating income with additional sources of revenue and continue to apply strict cost controls. And I think that is it for me, and I would open that up for questions.
Ms. Michaels.
I have a bit of a problem. Somehow, I don't think I'm the only one seeing some contradictory statements here. You know, you say we're profitable, we earned the $67,000, and then, golly gee, we're cash poor, we've got cash balance problems and everything. We've got $1 million in the bank, but we owe $2 million, and then we still owe the county for these tax anticipations. I mean, I just find that there's a lot of contradictory in the statements back and forth, and honestly, from a black and white numbers person, I'd like it straight down the board. This is what you have, this is what you owe, this is my net. We're not making money if you're looking for us to be finding ways to finance things. That's my opinion.
Okay, all right. So what would you like to see? I can say from a net income perspective,
I guess what I'd like to see is a little less of this, oh, this is wonderful, great, and in the next slide, oh, but this is really gloomy. We had a strong first, but it ended up poorly.
Well, wait a second.
You need to either have a good one or a poor one. You don't do both when you're giving a final report.
Well, let's if we can back up just a minute. Net income-wise for fiscal 2011 was over $1 million. That sounds to me like a good number.
But you have debt to offset that, and you have a lot of
wait a minute. We're getting confused, and I think where we might be getting confused. I'm sorry if I didn't explain it well. Okay. But you have the issue of the income statement, which records how we are operating on a day-to-day basis, how we've operated throughout the year.
And you can make your payroll with that, huh?
You can make what?
You can make your payroll with that?
No, you make your payroll with cash.
You've come in here several times saying that you're short not being able to make payroll either, so I just have a hard time seeing both sides. I know what an income statement is, I know what an expense statement is. I understand that you're giving us a final report, but at the same time, we also have payables outstanding and things of that nature that really sometimes I think there's a lot of good news and then whoop, there's the bomb, and oh, here's the good news, whoop, there's the bomb.
The good news is that from a revenue and expense standpoint, the nursing home was profitable in 2011. It was holding its own. The bad news is from the cash standpoint. We don't have enough cash coming in on a routine basis to pay our bills.
You're cash poor.
We are cash poor. That's correct. That is correct. You can have a positive income statement and a negative balance sheet position, which is what we have.
Mike, can I jump in here?
Sure.
So, for example, if in, let's say, the month of January, we provided services to our Medicaid residents where we should be paid $300,000 for the month in Medicaid. But the problem is, if that turns out to be $2 million over the year, but Medicaid is 6 months behind in paying us, we can anticipate that we should be paid that $1 million bucks, but if they're 6 months behind, now we're $500,000 short in cash, when in the past they were paying us every 30 days, or 30 days by the end of the month.
But should that not also show on your receivables?
Yes, it does.
She made the comment that about not meeting, paying the salary.
Not making payroll?
Yeah, we have always made payroll.
We've always made payroll.
We have always made payroll.
I know, but the last report that he gave was, we don't know if we can make payroll, we might have to borrow money. That's my comment.
Well,
I think that was true.
Cash flow being tight, you know, you worry about it, but we have always made payroll.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pay. I want to pay.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure, yeah. And we'd love to have the cash flow where we wouldn't have to be in a position that looks a little funky. But profitability-wise, I think nursing home is okay. Not in the last 2 months, not good. cash-wise, nursing home is poor.
Mr. Kibler.
Thank you for coming out today. This what happens next slide is probably the most important thing for me. Quite frankly, my biggest concern is that we talk about boosting operating income. We talk about maybe increasing our private pay days or increasing our Medicare days and trying to decrease Medicaid. That would potentially help. Maybe some other functions that are going on at the nursing home. There are other things we're trying to do to increase operating cash flow. What I want to see is not just, and I don't mean anything by this, but 6 words on a board really don't tell me where you think this is going to be projected to do. Give me some details, because I'm concerned what money we have in the nursing home today and the actions that you're doing. I'm kind of, that's where the train stops for me. I want to know what you're trying to do and where you forecast and where you foresee us getting out of this hole that we may be in with having to borrow and whatnot. So with this particular slide, if you can maybe expand a bit more about what it is that, at a high level, still high level, what you're going to be doing to increase basically cash flow and what you're doing to increase overall revenue and profit potentially, so that we have a better understanding of where we're going as opposed to what just happened. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. In all of the reimbursement systems that we are working with, there is a coding a coding regimen that has to be followed, particularly with Medicare. One was being considered for Medicaid, and that may still come into effect. Our coding capabilities have a lot to do with how much revenue we're able to recognize. It's a specialty, and we can always improve our coding skills. It gets at the clinical process, it gets at the medical management. Unnecessary admissions to the hospital are a big industry thrust right now. And hospitals are under increased pressure from the federal government to reduce unnecessary admissions. A lot of those admissions come from the nursing home. Not all of them, but a significant amount. If we are able to reduce the number of admissions that we give to the hospital, we could increase our average daily census on the order of 2 to 3 a day, which is significant. Now, that's not, that's still, if you fall and you break your hip, you're going to have to go to the hospital. And there are cases where it's clear cut that the residents are going to have to be hospitalized. It's just good care to do that. There are a fair number of incidents where we can improve the medical management process at the nursing facility, and we are working with the clinical team to get that done. We're looking at new services. There was a recent story about moving towards renal dialysis. We want to be moving on that. That's an initiative that we are trying to develop. The coordination of our medical management is something that is getting a lot of effort. Scott, this may be coming to you pretty quickly when I get finished here, but there are initiatives that we've been discussing with our physicians and our nurse practitioner to help refine the process. It's one of those things where you would say, wouldn't it be nice if we could get our costs down by $50 an episode? Well, it would be nice, but how do you do it? So when you go back to the root cause, you end up getting involved in the clinical process, and those are the efforts that we think are going to yield the most bang for the buck. Am I getting to your question?
So yes, you're getting to my question. What I would like to see maybe in future reports, and maybe even outlined a little bit and given to Ms. Busey, just a better understanding of where we're going to go, so that when we're looking ahead, because we're going to start going through budget process very soon, we're going to start going through other things that we've got to consider, everything that's happening within the county. It'd be good to know just what your projections may be given these initiatives that you're undertaking so that we can
Yeah.
take them into consideration.
Yeah, you're not going to get there by saying we can reduce staff. And the fact of the matter is we've got staff down to where it's pretty lean. You're not going to get there by saying we can raise our private pay rates by $50 a day. The market won't support it. We're going to have to get there with working through some process improvement. Do you want to comment?
I guess the one thing I can add is this whole issue with the hospital readmission issue is very huge, because starting in October, hospitals could be penalized up to 1% of their total Medicare reimbursement if they have a readmission rate of over a certain percent for each hospital. And that basically translates to, if I discharge someone from the hospital and they come back to the hospital in less than 30 days, that'll be a ding against the hospital. So now the hospital is financially incentivized to make sure that when they discharge someone, that person is not going to come back within 30 days. So what it means now is that the hospital has to reach out and partner, not only with community providers, home health, but also nursing homes, because now they are financially incentivized. And so it's not only, the feds have done a lot of research on this. It's a multitude of issues between the hospital, the physicians, and with the nursing home. And so what we've been doing is working with the hospitals and our physicians to improve our medical management of our residents. And if we can do that much better than any of the other nursing homes, then hopefully the hospitals are going to look at us and saying, hey, Champaign County Nursing Home has got their act together, they've been working with us, maybe we'll see our Medicare referrals increase. So what it comes down to is we want to provide the best quality care possible. That's what we always want to do, and if we can do it and improve it, because there's always room for improvement, it should translate into a higher census and a higher Medicare census specifically because of this issue that the hospitals have to deal with.
Let me take another run at this and be a last example, unless you want some more. There's been a development on the hospital side that affects all skilled nursing facilities. Under Medicare Part A, resident needs to be in the hospital for a 3-day qualifying stay. Hospitals are under enormous pressure from the federal audit contractors to reduce unnecessary admissions. And one of the approaches that the hospitals have taken is the use of observation days. And that's one of those things where if I get sent to the hospital, the presumption used to be that I would get admitted, particularly if I came from a nursing home. That's not the case anymore. So I might get sent to the ER, and I might be wheeled through the hospital. I might be in a room. It just looks like everything is going fine, and I look like a hospital admission, but I'm in observation status. So when I return to the nursing home, I haven't had the qualifying 3-day stay, and the nursing home does not get the Medicare reimbursement. I see you nodding your head. I'm striking a chord. I hope it didn't happen to you. You're not 65. It's impossible that it would have happened to you.
I look good for 65.
Okay, but those things, yes, you do look very good for 65. But that type of the change in behavior on the hospital has a major impact on us, and it forces us to rethink what we do with different types of cases, particularly with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and congestive heart failure. Those are two big classifications. So those are the types of things we're working on, and I hope we spoke on point to your question.
Mr. McGinty.
I continue to be very thankful for the expertise that you all bring to our challenges, much more than we possess. And I will remind our board and others where we were in losing $100,000 a month several years ago when we thought about bringing on some assistance and bringing on and appointing a board of experts to assist us. It took us 2 years longer than it should have, and it cost us a lot of money when we did not act quickly. This was quite a few years ago, before many of you were on the board. I encourage those that have not been on the board very long to talk with those that that have been on for quite a long time, because they felt the pain of seeing a large fund balance be depleted to not only zero, but to have our county and general corporate loan a tremendous amount of money to the home. We were at the end before. Diane, I feel your comments and I understand them, but working on the accounting basis of this, the accrual basis of the business versus cash, I think has been well explained. And it is a heck of a challenge. My day job is with a large healthcare provider in town, and I can tell you that truth is being told. The challenges that are out there, and even the effect that census has had in recent months, it has a month-to-month impact on the flow-through to opportunity at the Champaign County Nursing Home. I don't know when any of our board has engaged, and maybe many of you have, and I apologize if this is not the case, any of our existing nursing home board members. We have 2 liaisons on this board, Jan Anderson, who is extremely well informed about what's going on here. Ron Bensel, same. They know what's happening. I will tell you quite personally, I don't know if we as a county can stay in this business long term. I've been committed to this the entire time, and so many of you who have known me on this board have known that I've really emphasized the fact that we should be and need to be in this business, but it's getting tough. It's getting tough because it is an incredibly fluid environment where people do not know exactly when the money's going to come. So we try to control expenses, and this is thin. $62,000, that is break even.
That's break even.
With those payables out there, this is a precarious business to be in. And we have some challenges as a government body to continue to try to make money at this. We don't have any other money to loan. So it is fine to grill, but I think that it's important to engage our nursing home board that we brought on in the first place to bring expertise. They're a terrific board with a lot of knowledge. Use them. We can get information from them, who are already collaborating very directly with MPA, who I think have done an excellent job.
Well, thank you.
And our administrator continues to monitor this extremely closely. It's just a very difficult situation right now. So we have to think about bigger issues as a board. And I believe to micromanage less the nuances of this particular business, because I think that it's in as good a hands as it can be in. We need to think about whether we need to be in this business at all. I want to be, but I don't know if we can afford to be. And if we can't afford to be, what are our options? You see what's been happening in Vermilion? Well, they're doing some very important things there to ask the voters, should they even be in the business? I'm not that far behind of asking ours, to be quite honest with you, because we've asked for a big commitment to the building. We still owe a lot on it. We have some challenges ahead of us. We have to determine whether we even want to be in that business. It's easy to say, yeah, we got to be in that business, but look at the numbers. It's so tight right now. We don't have any other money to give. I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the effort that's going into it. I don't want to micromanage you. I trust that the Nursing Home Board of Directors is already doing that for us. So let's get on with it. Thank you.
Mr. Schrader?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions. First is, Michael, what's the current census we have right now, current census numbers?
That was 190?
We're at 190 or 191.
Okay. And either one of you or both of you can chime in. Looking down the road, what's the industry trend? Where are we going as an industry?
How much time do I have? I mean, can you narrow that down a little bit?
Well, are we going more to in-home service care with in-home service providers? Are nursing homes still going to be viable 12, 24 months down the road?
Let me take a crack at that. If you start at the top and say this is the hospital, and then you go downstream a little bit to the nursing home, and then you go to supportive living, and then home care, supportive living, assisted living, and home care, and so forth. And we're going to say the clear trend is everything shifts downstream. And there's no question that that's going to happen. And it's going to shift downstream with lower reimbursement and with more accountability expected, and much more regulatory oversight is on the industry. So what I would see happening, and what I do see happening, is there will be an exodus of cases from the hospital to the skilled nursing facility. We know for a fact that the intermediate care classification in nursing homes is probably going to be eliminated in Illinois over the next 3 years. A large number of your current population is in intermediate care. That's going to shift. And if they're Medicaid, they're going to go to home and community-based services like you're talking about, or to some sort of Medicaid-assisted living, which would be supportive living, or some other option that's out there. So the question is, can we expect to be able to fill the void from the patients that exodus from the hospital? And there's probably, in my opinion, there's not going to be there's not going to be a shortage of demand for skilled beds. I think we're going to see a great deal of demand for skilled beds. The question is, do we have the workforce that can take the higher acuity levels that are coming out of the hospital? That's something that we can gear up for and train. So I think your intuitions about what's going to happen in this industry are correct. They are. I would agree with that. There's going to be a big shift. So from just pick a vantage point. No matter where you are in the system, you're going to be forced downstream. You're going to be working with less reimbursement. You're going to be dealing with much more regulatory oversight and demands for accountability. And did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Did I make you want to sleep well tonight?
Ms. Emmons.
Probably just as well as you.
All right, thanks.
I just had one question. You gave us a 1 plus positive balance sheet. Does that take out the amount that was already borrowed?
Wait, well, let me have that again. I gave you a 1
You gave us a positive balance sheet, 1 million, I don't remember exactly.
Income statement.
Income statement.
Okay, on the balance sheet, we're running with about 1.1 million in cash.
In cash currently.
Yeah.
Does that take into account the money that we borrowed?
The money that
the nursing home borrowed?
Like for the long-term debt?
Yes.
No, that's not on our balance sheet. The $4 million that the county.
I don't mean from Champaign County. I mean from the banks.
The $788,000
yeah.
in tax anticipation notes.
Yes.
No, that's on the balance sheet as a short-term liability. It's on the balance sheet. Okay.
But it's not subtracted out of that bottom line. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it was subtracted from I gave you about 3.8 million in cash. That number was in there. The tax anticipation notes, we use that in operations to pay bills. We take all of that out, and we're down to 1.1 million in cash. That's where we're standing.
And so how much is actually left in bills owed? I know we only paid a certain amount of them off.
Right now we're about 1.7 million.
That we still owe.
I just still owe, yeah. So, and that's a good question, because it's a good observation, because remember, like you said, we got 1.7 million in payables, we got 1.1 million in cash, we're 600,000 out of whack.
600,000 negative.
Yeah. We're 600,000 short in cash to cover our payables, and that's just accounts payable. That's not all of the other liabilities that are out there.
And that is for past bills that we already owe, not ones that we're incurring currently.
That's right. We keep racking up bills every day, just like any other business. We rack up bills every day, and the cash comes in and use it to offset it.
Okay,
There's nothing unusual about that.
James, do you have a question?
Well, I was just going to, not really a question, probably a comment and following up on what Diane said. I guess when I look at numbers, you know, I look at all the assets that I have in my home and my business, and then I look at, okay, what do I owe? What is my outstanding debt to the bank, to my mortgage company, for different help that I have? And so I come up with my debt, and then I come up with my assets and see which one outweighs. And numbers can be fluid at best. I mean, when you read anything, we see it all the time, but I guess tax anticipation warrants means we're out a year ahead. Okay, so that is owed. And then we have our payables which come due that we're now extending 60 to 90 days, but that is owed. And even though you may make cash in a certain month, we all do. I mean, I make cash, but boy, the next month I'm biting my lip wondering where am I going to pay this next bill. So Diane basically was saying, and I would probably say, list all of our debt. And I know it's a simple way, not individually, but just list, you know, what we owe, and then probably what we have. And I know we're taking depreciation into account now, but over the course that I've been on here, and we've started with this, and I agree with Brendan, you guys have done a lot of changes and brought some stuff to the table, but we're fighting battles all the time. If we're not fighting how staff is doing with pay and that, then we're also fighting coding issues, then we're fighting some of these new laws and regulations. And the bottom line for this body, I would think, is where are we going to be in 3 to 5 years? Are we going to keep limping along? Or are we going to make some hard choices? Or do we see a turning point coming? Do we see things happening such as you're saying? I mean, that's what I think we're probably looking for, and you don't have a crystal ball. You do not have a crystal ball, but
which is okay.
As a business person, you know, like Facebook, I don't think I would have put my stock out there just yet.
Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I took it upon myself, along with Mr. O'Connor, to set in on that Vermilion County Committee meeting the other night, and I found it very informative. I also want to add that I appreciated Mr. McGinney's comments. I thought they were very useful. It's not directly related to the management. I think you folks are doing a decent job, or a very good job. Part of the problem in Vermilion County was the delay in payments. They have about enough cash for 5 months operation and nowhere to go. The county board also is facing the problem over there, and I suspect we are too, of delayed payments in other areas that come into the corporate fund. So it's cut their cash available over there even to assist the nursing home. To the point, if they don't get it resolved and they must continue to operate the nursing home, they're going to have to cut vital county services. I don't want us to get into that point. I'd like for us to have a discussion and to see whether or not we need to make some mid-course corrections. Thank you.
Any other questions on the report? Okay, let's move on to the item B. Ms. Anderson, would you be willing to move that item since you're on a nursing home? Microphone, please. Microphone.
Sorry. I move resolution number 8118, approving an amendment to the MPA management contract for management of the nursing home compliance program.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. McGinty. Discussion. Questions? Mr. Kibler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my overarching concern with this is that you guys, as everyone has said, has done a great job of managing the nursing home. What this agreement, I believe, says is that you will now be the auditor of the management team which oversees the nursing home. It's a great conflict of interest. Doesn't matter who you are. If you're, we'll do a timeout in just a second. But that is my first concern. Secondly, the price point. Knowing that there are others that can do the same job, specifically firms in Chicago, insurance agencies, whatnot. What I'm most concerned of, and why I wanted to really move this to finance, was because doing our due diligence on what other options are out there except for just this one option. And perhaps Perhaps the nursing home board has done their due diligence and has that. What I would like to see is what they've done and what options exist for us other than just this one. And if you'd like to respond to the first part, please feel free.
Okay. I think the term audit can be confusing, and we did have that discussion with the nursing home board. It's not an audit activity in the sense that we are an independent auditor certifying your financial statements. I would agree with you. If that were the case, it would be a clear-cut conflict of interest, and we're way out of line. The standard in corporate compliance is that by March 23rd, 2013, all healthcare providers will have in place a corporate compliance program. That program is expected to provide you with a review of the billing activities at the facility with the policies that are adopted to be in compliance with the regulations promulgated by the state and the federal government. And the audit functions are meant to be internal audits of your existing procedures to make sure that you've got your physician orders signed, that your care plans are accurate. It's not meant to say that we certify in the sense of a financial statement. And I just wanted to get that clarification out there.
May I respond?
Go ahead.
Duly noted. I could understand the difference between the financial audit versus this type of audit. There were certain clauses and phrases that gave me pause, for instance, the whistleblower clause and whatnot. You're the management agency, yet you want to come in and try to instill lowering whistleblowers and whatnot as part of the objectives. That just seems very contradictory, at least to me. Again, nothing against what you've done for the nursing home. You've done a fantastic job of bringing us back into the black. What I'm concerned about in this case with the objectives and goals of this particular program, I'm not convinced as of yet and can't vote yes to putting you guys now in charge of either the auditing role or making sure we're in compliance role. So that's just my piece. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Ms. Berkson, microphone.
I've got a son and daughter-in-law in HR, and this is the sort of thing that they do all the time. Training for compliance and checking compliance internally is just one of the functions of HR nowadays.
That's what this is.
Looks like an awfully good price to me.
I want to thank you for that, because this is a heck of a good price.
Ms. Evans.
I'm not sure about the price or pricing points, but what I would like to raise, and I do have concern, Exhibit A lists 9 areas that the compliance program or the elements of the compliance program, one being written policies, procedures, and standards of conduct. When we hired MPA, that's what we hired you for, because we have a nursing home director as well that absolutely should oversee HR, training, and all of the other operational features. It says, 2, a designated compliance officer and compliance committee. I don't understand the layers that we have right now on the nursing home to then turn around and pay the same company we hired to make sure the nursing home was running effectively to then do the same thing, effective training and education strategy. Why wouldn't we have these 9 points already?
The 9 points are specific promulgations from the Office of Inspector General of the United States.
But this is just good business practice.
Well, that may be. And there are plenty of policies and procedures in place now at the nursing home, and none of them are compliance specific. And this program is compliant specific.
Mr. Carter?
Yes. Did I understand you said the market for nursing home is going down?
I don't think I said that, sir. I said what if you're referring to what the conversation was over here in the back, we can expect our intermediate level residents to move out of the nursing home.
Well, that's the same thing.
Okay, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page, and be replaced by more acute patients from the hospital.
Well, I'm trying to find out why, because the American population is not getting any healthy.
That's right.
It's getting worse.
That's right.
So my point is, what is drawing off the people that's supposed to be going in the nursing home?
There are other places where they can be taken care of.
Well, then, that tells me that this facility is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, that letting these people go to these other facilities.
Well, okay, I'm at another spot, but I understand where you're coming from.
This is your problem.
And
I'm one. I was in our nursing home. I stayed in there for recovery. And I can tell you that there's a lot of things that can be done better to make that place function better. And the fact of the matter is, I'm not pleased with our board, how we handle that. We should be more close to the operation than county board. I mean, the nursing home. That's one problem that we have. There's no check and balance in that nursing home. There's nobody seeing that the nurse, you got to create an atmosphere for your business in the first place. Now, if you're going to sit there and let your nurse operations go down, you don't try to make it pleasable for people who want to come to work and want to be with you, you can expect bad. You're not going to make any money. And this, I'm not going to say all the problems, but that's one problem. Because we did have a good crop of nurses at one time. And I'm not going to lie, we didn't treat them right. And they finally went other places. So if you're going to stay in business, you can't do that. So I'm saying, as a body, and that's we own that nursing home. And I think we should pay more attention to the operations in nursing home.
Let's go with Mr. J. Going back around.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is really kind of petty, but it's a personal issue with me with professional fees. First of all, I would agree with Carol. I thought the amount of money that we're paying this firm that you would have been taking care of this for us. Now, I realize they changed the law on you, but they're going to change the law a lot more on us as we go along, and I hope every time that something changes, you're not back here for another fee increase so we can abide by the law. But in addition to the cost that you're charging, and it's $40,000, it looks like annually for this, plus the already exuberant price we're paying for you, which you're doing a good job, by the way, I'm not complaining about that. But you're going to charge us additional cost for long-distance telephone calls, other reimbursables, travel, lodging, webware, costs, training aids. I don't like doors left wide open. Every time we've been in a professional contract, they have this, we'll cover everything but this, and it leaves all of this wide open. We have no control over it. And I think in the past, we've been abused. And I don't like that in a contract.
Well, I'm fine nailing that down. I mean, I think if I can't recall the last time we sent you a statement that had telephone charges on it. I can be happy to take that out. If we have conferences where we get together with GoToMeeting or in a conference line, I think your monthly share of that is $7.50. You know, we're not. If we have someone come up and travel, they drive and they stay in a Country Inn or a Holiday Inn Express. We're not staying at the Ritz-Carlton. I'm happy to tighten that up for you. If you look at the experience that you've had with those line items of expense, I think you'll see that you've been treated fairly. And we want you to feel that way. We want to treat you fairly.
Strike that paragraph out and I'll feel wonderful.
Well, then you can feel wonderful.
Thank you.
But wait a second. But if we would send people up here who certainly would expect mileage, meals, and hotel.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that bothers me. Why did you take the job in St. Louis if you're going to charge us every time you come up here? We might as well spend our money locally.
Well, maybe if you...
Maybe we'll look at that next time.
Maybe you should, and then also look at the results. But I got you on this one. We're doing okay for you. You've got good results.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Good, thank you.
Okay, Mr. James.
The longer hair. My question is this a mandate that this has to be set up?
Yeah.
And gone by federal rules, and then this is a new mandated law that we have to, comply with and have set up, okay?
Yes.
But basically what I'm reading here and what everybody's saying, most of this stuff that's in here, from what we've been told before about double checking, signing off, making sure it's all complied with, it's there. So what you need to do is bring it all under, put it into some booklet that looks good for a government official that's going to look at it, and just make sure that we're following the lines, and then you're going to have an annual review is what I'm reading.
Well, no, you're going to have much more than an annual review, but you're on the right track.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, but going back to earlier, when we were talking about staff training and making sure that procedures were being followed, in the past, you have informed us that that was one area in the beginning that was not always being followed up on, and your group was going to do a better job at making sure it was. I mean, policies, just like with the county, and I say it all the time, policies are there, but sometimes they just set up on a shelf.
Well, that's the dilemma with corporate compliance. I mean, you can have a compliance program. If it sits on the shelf, you're in trouble.
Right. So you're going to make sure it's adhered to and signed off on.
Correct.
And then that goes back to what Mr. Keebler was saying, that I can see where you guys would do that and oversee it because you're doing it now. But it just, if you're the ones saying, yeah, it's done, I guess the assurance would be that we have to trust you that you are truly making sure, because I know I've worked in organizations where, yes, we'll sign that paper and it's been done, and staff never saw a lick of it.
That's correct. That is correct. But can I, Jen, I want to get one thing out there. Our approach to this service is the same as with the business office. Think of an owner with 10 facilities, and you're sitting there thinking, I've got to be in compliance with this regulation to have a compliance plan. Would you have one compliance plan or 10? You'd have one if you had 10 facilities, and you'd spread it out. You'd cut your costs by spreading it out over 10 units. And what we're saying in developing this service, we said, let's find a way for our clients to get some economies of scale. Let's share the cost of this thing, which goes back to you, that the $40,000 is a very competitive price. And the comprehensiveness of this is not going to be available at a better price elsewhere. I'm very comfortable with that. And it gives you the economies of scale to get into the compliance regimen.
Okay, okay, let's go Jan Anderson, then we'll swing back.
Well, a couple of comments. MPA has an expertise in working with county nursing homes, particularly in Illinois, and knows the Illinois regulations. Aside from what they're doing right here at the nursing home with the state of Illinois and the economy, they are working with people in Springfield, and know people there and know people around the state, and some of those groups are working together, and this is something that we could not do.
Thank you.
With an administrator could not do, and we're getting a lot of extra. And as a board member, we get a number of emails in between our board meetings giving us background things to read, giving us updates on maybe something that's happening in Springfield right now, which is very valuable. And I was going to just, I lost my train of thought on, someone mentioned the nurses and, the employees. I think we have improved the atmosphere at the nursing home. We don't have the complaints from the employees that we used to have. We may have some, and we have also attracted nurses and have, with good backgrounds, offering oversight. And I was going to suggest that, and maybe I'm wrong, but someone mentioned Exhibit A, but Exhibit B on 21 explains some of the things that you would be doing extra as a compliance. Would you want to speak to that at all? I mean, as I remember, it was offering the training so that our employees could be more effective. This would not be up on the shelf. It would be going through these trainings and making sure that the top employees know so they can supervise the other employees and make sure that we're in compliance in all these areas.
Yeah. Jen, I don't have that page in front of me, but I can.
Highest.
Oh, you got it? You got it? Oh, okay, this one here, okay. So looking at that exhibit, the approach is to come in and establish a baseline, evaluate your current practices, and see where you are. And that's different from all of the other policies and procedures that you have. So, what is the state of your compliance readiness? We know at Champaign County Nursing Home you don't have a compliance plan yet, and where we're doing this with other clients, some of them they're in different stages of preparedness, and from there we would spend the time to develop the policies, train the people in how those policies affect the compliance issues. We are prescribed by the Office of the Inspector General. We cannot prohibit whistleblowing activity. We have to encourage people to come forward and with their concerns, if there are any, and there, I'd be surprised if there are. But the fact remains that the focus has to be on the integrity of the bills versus the documentation that's contained in the care plan and the medical record. And that's what all of those exhibits are aimed at, those fundamental activities.
Ms. Michaels.
Okay, I have a question. Who's your compliance person now? Because obviously you have things that you have to comply with that do have to deal with some of these regulations.
Who's the compliance person at Champaign?
Yeah.
No, there is no compliance program now.
So there's been no checks and balances in this county nursing home since you guys have been in here?
No, not in terms of corporate compliance.
Is this person going to be an on-site person?
Pardon me?
Are they going to be on-site or downstate?
They're going to. They will be on site periodically. Their primary activities will be corporate support from our office in St. Louis, on site, whatever it takes to get the program implemented and managed.
So you're saying, and so right now you're saying that you're not doing any kind of compliance or training?
Well, we are doing, don't misunderstand me that we're not doing any training of our personnel, but.
Well, no, I'm talking about compliance.
Yeah, and in that case, we don't have a corporate compliance program, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Ellis.
My only concern with this, and perhaps someone on the nursing home board could speak to this, is I have no way to evaluate the $40,000 number. I mean, unless we have talked to other vendors to see what they would charge us, we have no idea whether that's a good price or a bad price. I mean, given the amount of work it sounds like it is, it sounds like it's probably a good deal.
Yeah, it is.
But I would like to, I think it's our obligation to confirm that by seeing how much other people are paying for similar services from other vendors, or looking at other vendors myself. That's my only concern at this point.
Ms. Holyfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what you're hearing tonight is just a whole lot of frustration that we're all having with whether or not we're going to be able to pay our bills. And so this additional compliance management, compliance issue for policy and procedure that will be implemented based on requirements from the government is frustrating. And we know it needs to be done, and it should have probably been done a long time ago. And so my question to you is, with this, the cost of $40,000, I agree with Chris, Alex, that it would be nice to find out if there was a less expensive way to put this program into play. So I do very much agree that it should be something that we should either be able to negotiate or find a company that is competitive that can implement the program. But my question to you is, with this compliance program in place, do you foresee an opportunity for this county nursing home to save money? Is that anything that you think will potentially happen because we have a new management or policy and procedure to follow? Will we be able to make this up somehow with the $40,000 additional in this policy and procedure compliance issue?
It's possible, but I have to tell you straight out that when we put the program together, it was not designed to save money. It was designed to keep you out of the crossfires of the regulators. And it's more a pound of prevention, an ounce of prevention versus the pound of cure. So maybe, yeah, it's possible that we could find something, but we're not going into it with that as our primary objective.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Petrie.
Yes, 2 items. First item is an information question. It pertains to the last paragraph on page 8. And it says, both clients have recognized a saving of approximately 40% while improving the effectiveness of the business office. And I'm curious what that estimated amount would be, and maybe that's an amount of money that helps us cover some of this proposal.
So the question is that, did you realize savings from the business office move? The answer is yes, you realize about 40%.
Well, and what is that rough amount?
In terms of real money, 120, it's 40% of 120, about $48,000.
Okay, and then the second point is, I call the question. Oh, she had asked for something first, sorry.
Okay, Ms. Ammons.
I have to, because if the members took a few minutes, and I really appreciate the original request to defer this item, because if the members took a few minutes to read the contract with MPA, some of the same things that we're talking about are in the contract for MPA that we originally agreed to have them as the management company in the first place. And I'll just give you an example of that. In Section 4, Manager's Duties, 4.1, General Responsibilities. Under that, it says, in accordance with the home, to establish policies and procedures for Champaign County Board and the Nursing Home Board, and shall be responsible for all commissioned authority of such activities. These things that are being listed, I can go on because the contract is pretty long, but several of these items are already in your MPA contract and should be covered under your MPA contract, even though the federal government is just asking for it right now. I think this is an inappropriate expenditure, and we should not approve that expenditure because, A, we have a nursing home board who has great qualifications, according to this board, to do the very thing of compliance and at least draw up a compliance plan. And then, B, we have a director that I'm not sure what the director does, but if the director is also being paid by Champaign County, the director should be training and producing compliance to make sure that their staff are trained. That's usually how most businesses work, that the person is the director, makes sure that training and accountability issues are being addressed. I don't think that first and foremost is in the budget anywhere for us to do $40,000. And secondly, I think we're going to double pay the same people that we're already paying. And if it's in the contract.
Ms. McGinty.
Well, I don't agree with a lot of that. And I will say that during my day job, I am part of corporate compliance. We have attorneys and professionals that are a big staff to deal with this all the time. And I guarantee you that the total expenditure of that is a hell of a lot more than $40,000. But with that, I will go back to Jeff's original idea and suggest that we vet this through the nursing home board and have this board engage. Mike, you did say that there's no immediacy to this, and we've already spent a lot of time tonight. We've got a big agenda tonight, so I'm going to move that we defer.
There's a motion on the floor.
There's already a motion on the floor.
The motion to defer has ranks over it, so I accept the motion. Could you defer clarify, defer to?
Defer to next appropriate cow.
Okay, second by Mr. Skidler. Is there discussion on the deferral?
The appropriate cow would be finance? Because it came to here first as opposed to...
I think that finance would be appropriate. It's a finance issue to a certain extent. Mr. Schrader, comment on the deferral?
Thank you. Yes, I would encourage, and I'm not saying all the questions were bad, for lack of a better word, but I would encourage my board members to come here more educated. There are 2 board members that sit on this board, Ms. Anderson and Mr. Benzel. If you don't have their numbers, I'll be happy to find them for you. Contact these people. They sit on the board. If not, there's, I believe, 5 other members that sit on this nursing home board and know a lot of things. Contact them, talk with them, ask these questions that have been asked tonight, any question. If they can't answer you over the phone, maybe you can meet with them. Maybe they'll get back to you with the answers. Please, I beg you. We spent a lot of time with this tonight, as Mr. McGinney just said. Please, get in touch with these people. Thank you.
For discussion on motion to defer. See none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much, gentlemen. If you hang around, you can hear us talk about roundabouts. Or you can leave. Okay, thank you. All right. Next item is highway and transportation. Mr. J, we have 3 items, 2 on the main agenda and 1 on the addendum.
You got your addendum. I don't have my addendum.
We'll get one for you.
Okay. Number 1's been pulled. Is that correct? The first thing. All right. The second thing under highway is a resolution number 8108 to advise the city of Champaign that Champaign County supports a standard intersection at Olympia Drive and Lincoln Avenue and not a roundabout.
Mr. J, I point out you said city of Champaign. I think it's city of Urbana.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. James. Discussion. Mr. Schrader.
Well, I am totally opposed to a roundabout because for probably 20 years, the biggest traffic out there is going to be coyotes, rabbits, skunks, possums, and raccoons. If you put 3 stop signs out there, it's going to save a lot of money for 20 years. It's going to take a long time, people, to develop Olympia all the way to Route 45. So I think it's a waste of money and to put a roundabout out there, and as far as I'm concerned, if Urbana wants to put a feather in their cap for a roundabout, go to 5 Points, put one out there. There's plenty of room out there right now. Tear it up and put a roundabout there. That makes more sense there than out there where the animals be happy to have it, I'm sure. Because farm equipment will not fit in that, period.
You left me off the list.
Mr. James, you have a comment?
I was just going to say I travel out. He left me off.
Oh, you're with the coyotes. Further discussion. Mr. Langenheim, microphone, please.
I'm going to repeat what I said at the Kyle meeting. Roundabouts save fuel, they cost less, they save space, they save lives, and furthermore, the arguments have been given that they're going to have to tear it up when the road goes to four lanes. Whatever they put in is going to have to be torn up when it goes to 4 lanes. The argument that the farmer can't get from the north side of the Squire Farm to the south side of the Squire Farm without going through that roundabout is incorrect. There are field access openings on that Olympian Drive that will allow those people to move their machinery across without having to go through that interchange.
Mr. Mosher, you have something to say?
I had my first experience with one in Cambridge, Minnesota yesterday.
You survived.
Barely. I pulled out in front of 3 people. And I'll tell you, when you get to be my age, it's bad, but Ralph, at your age, I don't even want to see you out there.
I could get personal too, but I don't think I will.
Mr. Richards. Mr. Richards.
Ring the bell.
I'm going to follow up Mr. Langenheim. If we're going to go to the trouble of repeatedly voting on a resolution that the city of Urbana is going to ignore anyway, I'm going to also be on the record as saying there are uses for roundabouts. I'm pro-roundabout. I don't know if this is a situation for a roundabout, but I don't think we should automatically rule it out. Not that the city of Urbana cares what we think anyway.
Ms. Anderson.
In public participation, I think her name was Pearson, Christine Pearson, talked about safety and that she hadn't heard us say anything at the cow meeting. If we hadn't, that was an omission that we should have emphasized, because the statistics show that roundabouts do save lives. And I've seen them in Hawaii in rural settings where I don't know if it was ag equipment, but huge buses and so forth have no problem going around. There are many of them in Florida. Indiana has a lot of them now, and in the beginning they weren't convinced, but once they got them, they have seen the effects, particularly safety, and are enthusiastic about them. So I am going to vote against this resolution.
Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. I lived in D.C., Maryland area, for 11 years, and if anybody's ever visited D.C., there are roundabouts almost at every intersection in Washington. There was one time I spent 2 weeks on that roundabout trying to get off of it. The difference is stark. We're talking about an area like 5 Points for a roundabout where there's traffic. I mean, yes, safety, all these statistics come from areas that have thousands of cars a day using these roundabouts. And I do understand how it slows cars down. But there are more fender benders. There are not deaths and that, but there are more fender benders trying to get across 3 or 4 lanes in those roundabouts, getting on and trying to get off in the D.C. area. Here, we're talking about the middle of nowhere. We're talking about farmland. We're in the middle of our county where maybe there might be, I don't know if there'll ever be a bus going through that intersection, period. I don't think the MTD is going to annex out there yet. Well, they may like to, but I just don't see a roundabout in that area. I am not against roundabouts per se. It's just the location of this roundabout that seems ridiculous to me.
Ms. Bergson.
It seems that a lot of the feeling about the roundabout is that trucks will be coming through and they don't want to stop. But that could be very easily fixed. There's not going to be much traffic north of the intersection. So the north could be the only direction stop, and then you could have the road bend and go down like this, and the trucks wouldn't have to stop in either direction. And you still wouldn't have the expense of a roundabout.
Further discussion. Mr. Mosher again.
I learned more about my corn head and my combine and my 2 tractors from Bill Gray than I knew from the owner's manual. I mean, it's important that I know how wide that corn head is and how much that combine's going to take up in one of those things, and it'd just be a disaster out in that area or any area that traveled with farm equipment. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And those things could be obsolete again in another 10 years if the trend continues. And I don't know why the mayor wasted all of Urbana's money putting those numbers out when they're available from the internet on the manufacturer's website.
Ms. Holderfield.
I think that we could, instead of a roundabout, I think maybe if we put those stop strips in that alert the driver that you're getting close to a stop sign, and maybe a few yield sign or something, you know, flashing lights would be a lot less expensive than a roundabout. I'm not against safety by any means. I travel a lot of rural roads, and there are a lot of preventative measures that are utilized to alert the driver that they're coming upon a, you know, a potentially dangerous intersection. Accidents are tragic when they happen in a rural setting. They're tragic when they happen on an interstate. They're tragic when they happen in town. They happen. And I don't think that placing a roundabout in that particular area is going to prevent anything from happening. But I think there's other things that we can try to do to slow people down or alert them that there's a stop coming up, and they're a lot less expensive than putting in a roundabout in a rural area.
Any other comments or questions?
I call.
Well, okay, we have Mr. Betts, Mr. Langen went for roll call. Okay, you ready to vote? Roll call, please. Remember, a yes will support the resolution, a no will not support it.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
No.
Schrader?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Ammons?
No.
Anderson?
No.
Bergson?
Yes.
Betts?
No.
Carter?
Yes.
Esri?
Yes.
Holderfield?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kibler?
Yes.
Kurtz?
Yeah.
Langenheim?
No.
Maxwell?
Yes.
McGinty?
Yes.
Michaels?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes.
Mosier?
Yes.
O'Connor?
No.
Petrie?
Yes.
Quisenberry?
Yes.
Weibel?
No. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, a point of clarification on the next resolution is 8109. Is it the same item as the addendum was?
No. They're different resolutions. One is appropriating funds, the other is emergency procurement.
Need to address these separately?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Would move adoption of Resolution 8109 authorizing emergency procedures for bridge deck replacement in Kirby Avenue.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schrader. Discussion. Mr. Blue is still here if he wants to talk about it. Mr. Schrader?
Yeah, I have some questions for Jeff. Mr. Blue, if you would. Okay, we're talking about replacing the I-57 deck on Kirby Avenue. Is IDOT going to be part of this in any form, engineering or anything?
For our project?
Yeah. I don't think that's on.
Batteries might be dead. Here, Caesar, let's go here.
The only part that IDOT will have any say in is basically approving of the plans, obviously, and approving of the township bridge funds that we're going to use for 80% of the project. And as well, we have already set up a coordination meeting between IDOT, the county, IDOT's contractor, and the township to try to coordinate how the contractor on I-57 bridge is going to be able to do his work in the time that this deck replacement is ongoing.
Is it just a deck, or are you replacing the I-beams and the deck?
Well, the deck is a precast concrete deck, so there's no I-beams to replace. So all we're doing is pulling the old deck off. We do have to raise the caps on the abutments and the piers about 4 inches because the new deck is actually going to be a little thinner or shallower than the old deck. And then they will put the new deck on, grout it, put asphalt over the top. We're really thinking the 12 days is pushing it, but we think we can make that timeline as far as getting the entire project complete.
And what's this going to do to our bridge fund? That's my final question. What's it going to do to our balance on our bridge fund?
Well, our TPP fund, which is our Township Bridge Program Fund, we don't have a lot of township projects going this year. We actually only have one. It's $32,000 out of the county bridge fund, which is not a significant amount, you know, when we're talking about $1 million bridge fund. So we don't necessarily budget for emergency stuff, but we definitely keep a balance to make sure that if these types of issues come up, that we have the cash to be able to deal with it.
Thank you.
Ms. Petrie?
I have two information questions. The first information question is when something falls under this description of an emergency, does it tend to end up costing more since you don't have much time for bidding?
I would say it's not going to be less. The materials are going to be similar cost, and materials are typically about half of the contract cost for something like this. Will the contracting and the actual construction of it be more? Right now we have a lot of contractors that don't have a lot of work. So it may very well be that we would get this at a similar price that we would get a typical bridge. But I can't guarantee that. I mean, we're assuming it's going to be maybe 10%, 20% more as far as the labor and the activity, simply because we're putting a really tight timeline on this thing, and the reason we are, which is in the memos, there's some folks that live there, and we're going to be cutting them off from their house. To do this in 12 days, they're probably going to have to work 12-hour days to get that done, which means they're going to have to pay their employees overtime and so forth. So yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more.
Okay, and my second information question is a general question. Do you have a program that is very similar to the road program that you have set up so that you are looking at the bridges and can anticipate bridge repair and expenses as we budget ahead, so emergencies such as this don't often come up for us to be deciding upon?
Yeah, I mean, by federal law, we have to inspect every bridge on a 2-year rotation basis. We have 640 bridges in Champaign County that we inspect on a 2-year rotation. Now, we don't always actually build the bridges that are in the worst shape, because that bridge might be in Harwood Township, and Harwood Township has to save their money for 8 to 10 years to get their match money in order to do a bridge. So a lot of it is dependent upon how much money the townships can levy in their bridge fund and come up with their share of a project. A project like this, the township ends up paying 10% of the total cost.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Bergson?
What exactly are we doing?
It's the part that you drive on, basically. That is the bridge deck. So, you know, you've got the substructure underneath that actually holds the bridge up. This is the part that the cars actually drive on, is what the bridge deck is.
Mr. Kibler?
Just a quick clarification, Mr. Blue. You mentioned, I think, a couple of comments ago, 12 days?
Mm-hmm.
But the dates are June 4th through August 3rd. What happens the rest of the time?
Those dates are the I-57 bridge being closed down. We're looking at July 2nd through July 14th for the actual replacement of this deck structure on the Copper Slough Bridge. So what's happening is IDOT's closing down the I-57 bridge, which is going to really hurt traffic going east-west across Champaign, obviously. What we don't want to do is come in after they have done their work and do our work and, you know, goof up the traffic for another 2 to 3 weeks, or come in and do it at a different time and have to reestablish all the traffic control, reestablish the detours that people are taking. It's going to be a hassle for the contractor on the IDOT job to have this bridge closed. That's why we're having the coordination meeting. But for the minor hassle that it's going to cost them, we don't have to detour 12,000 vehicles a day for another 2 to 3 weeks.
And just to follow up on that, the detour route, because Staley Road's also closed, Kirby's now closing, it seems like there's a lot of people in that vicinity that's going to be coming in and out. What are we doing to mitigate any risk, because everybody trying to funnel into the Southwest Champaign?
I actually don't know what the exact detour route is for the I-57 bridge, because that's not our project. I'm assuming they're taking them down to Windsor and bringing them across. Obviously, if we were doing this plan all on our own, we'd have to establish detours, we'd have to pay a contractor to put up all the signs to make those detours, we'd have to do nightly detour inspections. So when we talk about cost, as Ms. Petrie was talking about, if we did this as a standalone project, those would all be costs that we would have to incur. So you have to look at the positives and negatives of whether we do this now. We think that the positives greatly outweigh the negatives because the I-57 bridge is closed. That's why it's an emergency situation. Also, if we didn't do this bridge right now, when a bridge gets to the point where the rating is such that this bridge is, based on our last bridge inspection, IDOT sends a cavalry over from Springfield, and the next thing you know, that bridge is posted at about 10 tons, and there's no trucks going across it anyway. So not only would it obstruct traffic while we were constructing it, but it may also be posted for load limits in the meantime.
Thank you.
Mr. Alex.
Just one question, Jeff. This is the bridge just east of I-57, right?
Right.
There's one home in
Yes.
between.
Right.
Well, I assume we're making arrangements with them.
They're going to Spain from July 2nd to July 14th.
We like that. Are we paying for their plane
No.
ticket?
That's why these dates are being chosen. I mean, literally.
No, that's good to know. My only concern then would be, fire access.
I agree. And the 57 bridge, you can get a fire truck across it. They just don't want cars weaving in and out of the employees that are trying to fix the deck on the bridge.
Okay, so
they're not taking that bridge out.
Okay.
They're just doing work on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Finally, on the addendum, resolution number 8168, approving a petition and appropriation of funds from the County Bridge Fund pursuant to 605 ILCS 5/5501. And
We have a second by Ms. Holder for that. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
I think that's it.
Thank you.
All right, Finance, Mr. McGinty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recommend adoption of resolution number 8090 approving an amendment to the Aramark Inmate Commissary Services Agreement, and I so move.
Second. Second by Mr. Mosier. Discussion. See none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I recommend adoption of resolution number 8110 authorizing inclusion of taxable allowances as IMRF earnings, and I so move.
Second. Second by Mr. Quisenberry. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Show of hands, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 is the majority, so the motion carries.
Item number 3, I recommend adoption of resolution number 8111 approving fiscal year 2013 salary administration plan for non-bargaining employees, and I so move.
Second, Mr. Esri. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I recommend adoption of resolution number 8112 for payment of claims authorization, and I so move.
Second by Mr. Quisenberry. Discussion. See none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
I recommend adoption of resolution number 8113 for purchases not following purchasing policy, and I so move.
Second by Mr. Mosier. Discussion. Ms. Emmons.
I just have one question, and I don't know if Ms. Busey can realistically answer it, but I'll ask it anyway. On this particular document, there are payments from '07 on this document, and I'm really perplexed by that one.
Like in 2007?
2007, unless I'm misreading it.
Are you on page 41?
Okay, let me
The
go back
agenda.
to the page. I'll go back to the page.
Everything I see is from 2011.
I think on the website, I looked from the website and there was other pages there on the link online. I did see this, but there was a page before it that said 07, so maybe that's incorrect. So I'll withdraw that. I'll withdraw.
I looked at them online today. I noticed it, a lot of them were from 11, but I didn't see a 7. I'm not sure, unless I can't see.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Number 6, I recommend adoption of resolution number 8167, establishing the fiscal year 2013 budget process, and I so move.
Second by Mr. J. Discussion? Ms. Petrie?
Just a clarification question. I see it is in here for all of us to be able to look at the document electronically. Is it going to be possible for the public to also look at those documents?
The documents are published on the website typically when we place the budget on file in October.
Right, used for a 30-day period?
Right. That's when it's available to the public, because it's still a working document at this point.
Okay, and so then during that 30-day period, the public, in theory, will have a chance to come before the board to make any comments that
Right,
they
and
might
they will
wanna
know
make.
at that point what the board is really looking at in terms of a budget.
Thank you for the clarification.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
And that is all from finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGinty. Policy Personnel Appointments, Ms. Ammons.
I'm sorry, I'm using this handy dandy computer. It's not as easy to go. Yeah, all right. Policy moves adoption of resolution number 8114 in support of the Police Training Institute at the University of Illinois.
Second by Mr. Carter. Discussion. Okay.
Roll call vote, please.
Roll call vote, Ms. Linehouse or somebody else? Mr. Betts. Okay, roll call, please.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
No.
Schrader.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Ammons.
No.
Anderson.
Yes.
Berkson.
No.
Betts.
No.
Carter.
No.
Esri.
Yes.
Holderfield.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
No.
Kibler.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Maxwell.
Yes.
McGinty.
Yes.
Michaels.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mosier.
No.
O'Connor.
No.
Petrie.
Yes.
Quisenberry.
Yes.
Weibel.
Yes, motion carries.
Policy moves adoption of resolution number 8115, appointing a Democrat to the Board of Review, term ending 5/31/2014.
Mr. Betts, would you take over the chair, please?
Hello, Mr. Weibel.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. As you know, motions to nominate people can only be made from the floor, so I nominate Mr. Wayne Williams as the Democratic member to the Board of Review.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Ammons. Discussion. Oh, Ms. Petrie?
Yes, just for the record, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Weibel for opening up the process so that we had a number of candidates to consider for these openings. And based on the information that I have read about the Board of Review and covering up the names on the applications and looking solely at the qualifications of the applicants, Mr. Weibel and I are not in agreement as to the applicants who should have been put forward, so I cannot support his nominee for the Democratic position.
Mr. James.
Mr. James.
That's what I was going to say, roll call, but Ralph beat me.
Okay. Mr. Alex.
I'd just like to express a little bit of frustration on this. I mean, I've heard from members of this board who I trust very much statements to the effect that the board of review is, completely broken and the only way to fix it is to completely clean house. And I've heard statements to the effect that, it's this person's fault or it's that person's fault. People have spoken in their defense, and I think it's just, at this point, very difficult for me to resolve the claims and counterclaims about what is actually happening in, behind the closed doors of the Board of Review. Therefore, at this point, I'm inclined to take the easy way out and support the board chair on this one.
Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. This comes very difficult for me. 2 years ago, I put my full and unwavering support behind Mr. Williams in his appointment to the Board of Review. But the information we have recently received has made it apparent that changes to the entire board must be made. I cannot in good conscience vote to reappoint any of the current Board of Review members. We represent the residents of this county, and our goal is to good government. Our residents must be treated fairly and with courtesy. Rules must be adhered to and complaints fairly adjudicated. State mandates must be followed, and the board must have accountability. The information we received was the reason that Chair Weibel opened up the testing process to accept new qualified candidates for both of these positions. We now have those new and more qualified candidates. It's time for a fresh start.
Other comments from members? Mr. McGinty.
I'm struggling in a couple different ways. If my esteemed former colleague, Mr. Nuno, were here, he would be talking about qualifications and always bringing on the most qualified person, almost no matter what the position. And with this one, yeah, I agree with Chris that it certainly feels broken. I don't know, because I'm not there every day, so I'm not sure. I'm a little confused because I see two appointments tonight, and I don't know the will of the Republican caucus regarding the next appointment, and that, as I understand it, is not going to be the incumbent, even though it was at Cal. I'm just working through this in my head because there are confusions here. And so I really don't have a good feel for how this should go best, other than to say that the most qualified people, per what Al is talking about, is what's important here. We as a board have an obligation to bring on the most qualified people and to try to have those folks representing these important jobs. I don't really have a great feel. You typically trust the chair's appointments. And I'm going to be more confused on the next one than this one because he's just reappointing the incumbent. I guess I would ask for a more detailed explanation as to why the appointment is being made from the chair. That would be helpful.
Mr. Chairman, would you like to explicate your decision-making process?
Certainly, Mr. Williams has made mistakes in the last 2 years. I think certainly part of the problem was that he became a member and put into what I call an uncomfortable environment when that board sort of forced on him, made him the chair of the board on the very first day. It sort of says something about the environment he was in. I think he deserves another chance to learn more and become a better board of review member. That is why I decided to nominate him again for a second term.
Mr. Chairman, may I have a follow-up?
Sure.
You described there being mistakes, which we all make mistakes. Could you describe what you perceive those mistakes to be?
Well, I think some of the procedures in determining the township median, I think were some of the problems, and actually, I guess determining the ratios used using ratios to determine the medians. Unfortunately, I don't have my notes with me, so I'm doing it from the top of my head. The method chosen should be random. The methods that were used were not random, and I think that was not his fault. That's what he was taught by his fellow board of review members. So I think certainly that's one of the mistakes here. I mean, some of the complaints have been about how the Board of Reviews is less citizen-friendly. In fact, I think Mr. Williams is probably the most friendly of all of them. He tends to go beyond normal times to work with the public, and if they have a question, he's willing to bend over to answer it, I think more so than the other two members. Unfortunately, Mr. Betts, I don't have my notes with me, so.
Mr. Mosier, you had a question?
My complaint with Mr. Williams is he has made no effort to get certified as an appraiser in this county. And I know they handled 2,100 complaints last year. And I had a problem with the complaint that Pius sent out. When you start looking at comparable sales in this county, and you go to Broadlands and there's one house. And some of these local assessors for the whole township are not qualified in a lot of cases to make a judgment on those things. If you can't use all three approaches in an appraisal, especially on commercial property, you're in trouble. And commercial property in this town is getting to be a bigger and a bigger thing, and most of those people that own that property are smart enough to go find an appraiser that knows how to do it and to make a case, and a lot of times they're going to win because we don't have people on this board that are qualified to defend their position. I've been in this business for 35 years, and I know when you do a farm or when you do a house, you're going to have varying opinions on it. But in a market like this, the last 4 years, it's hard to sit and try to make a judgment about what was worth something 5 years ago is worth today, because it isn't. And I think we need people on that board that are knowledgeable in all approaches to appraisal business. And to me, that's their biggest job. And I have not seen in Mr. Williams any effort to get more education. He's gotten a lot more experience. But the way this state operates, if you're not certified as an appraiser, you're not supposed to be in a business, and he's not. And getting somebody that is getting more and more difficult with all the regulations they've put on real estate agents and appraisers.
Ms. Holderfield, then Ms. Emmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As most of you know, I have been a licensed realtor broker for 18 years. And so when I review all of the applications, I'm looking for those qualifications that will enable someone to fairly evaluate a property, and like Mr. Mosier said, from all approaches. And he's absolutely correct, and I think all of us understand that property values are a little bit like a roller coaster. And I think our farmland is a lot different. I think our residential real estate is different. I think our commercial real estate is different, and it's precarious in some issues and under some circumstances. Having an expertise in this field is, I think, what's most important when we're serving the voters of Champaign County. Unfortunately, in my mind, Mr. Williams is not the most qualified candidate to assume this extremely important position. I do not support his appointment.
Ms. Emmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to clarify a couple of things that's from the Illinois compiled statutes, Chapter 200, 3 through 5. A couple of things have been said. The only requirement for the Board of Review members is to take the certification test with the Illinois Department of Revenue. The statute does not require the Board of Review members to have an appraisal's license. The person who's actually required to have an appraisal's license is the supervisor of assessments. That is under Section 3-5. Not only do they have to have an appraisal's license, but it enumerates several other areas including an addition of at least 2 years of experience in the field of property sales, assessments, finance, and appraisals. That is because the Board of Review is set up to review the assessment books that's passed on from the Supervisor of Assessments. Now, the Board of Review can disagree with the assessments. They can disagree and they can change it because that is what the statutes allow them to do. But I think what is being discussed here, again, 2 years ago, the requirements were the same for the Board of Review. The person did not have to have an appraiser's license to be on the Board of Review. They had to pass the test from the Illinois Department of Revenue, of which Mr. Williams did, and also made his good on that appointment as well. I think this has nothing to do with his qualifications whatsoever. If you take time and look at the compiled statutes, and it starts at 35, it explains the difference between the Supervisor of Assessments and the Board of Review. And what is being asked or charged solely to Mr. Williams in this case, is a across-the-board operations of the Board of Review as opposed to the Supervisor of Assessments office, which they have some interconnected roles that they play. I have an A through Z layout of every one of these compiled statutes that the board members are certainly welcome to. And I understand Mr. McGinty's concern about not being sure what exactly is happening here and why Mr. Williams' appointment, after only serving 2 years, becomes the focal point of a very long-term issue with the Board of Review. Prior to Mr. Williams being on this board, there were many, many defaults already under prior leadership that some say were great, but nonetheless, you had many defaults in Champaign County even at that time. And even prior to him being appointed to the Board of Review, and prior to us appointing the most seniorly person on the Board of Review currently, there were many, many defaults. This board has never, ever seen, I have not, maybe I should speak for myself, but I've not been at a meeting of this board where I have seen any qualifications for anybody. We have taken the nomination of our chair as having done the job that he was supposed to do. I'll leave it at that. Unless necessary, I'll be glad to share anything that I have in relationship to this, and would ask the board members to reconsider their appointment or acceptance of the nomination by the chair on this appointment, because we're dealing with a person who has come in and done, as many of you can find out, a lot more work on the Board of Review than some have done in the past. And so I think this is a very small window that we are being presented to make this determination, and it should not be made in such a small vacuum as that.
Other comments? Yes, Mr. Schrader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 years ago, I supported Mr. Williams on this Board of Review. And I made it clear to one of the current board members, or then current board members, that I thought it was unfair to put him in the position of chair of that board. He had no experience on that board, and I think it was unfair. So I'm not sure if the Democrat caucus had a say in this or not. It's usually something that's brought up. If it's a political appointment, yes, it's the chair's responsibility to make these appointments. But when it's a political, it's usually asked by the caucus which one they prefer if there's multiple appointments. So I just wanted to pass that on before we get to the next appointment.
Mr. Jay.
I guess one of my biggest frustrations through all of this has been the fact that it's irregardless of which political party you're in right now, we have no accountability over the board as it sets. And if we do, we're not using any accountability. So it isn't about individuals, it's about getting the work done. And we really do need to make a change if we're going to ever get this back on track. And I did ask the chairman if he would put a committee together, or at least a group together, and see if we couldn't establish some accountability and at least some communications, because it is our responsibility and his, to be sure that this assessment process continues like it's supposed to, and it's crucial for all of us taxing entities, all of the tax entities, not just the county. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Carter.
You know, it's ironic when this person came up for appointment the first time. I don't care who you are, you be my brother. If you're not qualified, I'm a decent enough person to say no. And I asked, was Mr. Williams qualified before they voted on him? And I was told yes, he was. Now, why you wait all this time to hold that person in a position and use them, and he never was told nothing? I bet he wasn't even given a job description. But yet still, I'm gonna tell you, you can do dirt, but what goes around, brother, comes around. Now, you do this, I'm gonna do it in good faith. Nobody showed me why he did anything wrong. If you're gonna do that, then you have to clean the house. You're gonna have to clean every one of them if you're gonna clean it up. You can't take those two individuals and make an example out of what's going wrong with that board. This could be you next time. But I just hope that you have in your heart to start doing something right and get the politics out of it. We paid $100,000 something back to get rid of individual. For what? The same politics that's going on right now. And we ought to be ashamed.
Someone who hasn't spoken yet, Mr. Richards.
I'm going to vote for Mr. Williams. I'm a little confused, I guess. I am also concerned by these problems that are supposedly on the Board of Review, but this is nothing that we heard about until the last few weeks. And just like Mr. Alex, I'm a little bit unclear with the cross charges exactly what's going on here. We sure didn't hear about this the last time the Board of Review came up. And Mr. Williams was qualified 2 years ago. As far as I had been able to tell, and still can tell, he's been doing a competent job. And his qualifications seem to be working just fine. Is there theoretically somewhere out there in the universe who might be more qualified? Yes, but looking at the people who have applied, he looks to me for the only one up for this appointment who meets the qualifications to be on the Board of Review. And so I have concerns. Wish I would have heard more about this the last couple weeks, but I'm going to give the chair and Wayne Williams the benefit of the doubt here.
People who haven't spoke yet. Okay, I'm doing round two. Excuse me. Mr. Maxwell, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I thought that the board chair made a very compelling case for the replacement of the entire Board of Review in his memo that he sent out initially. And I appreciate the work that he did on that. Therefore, I do not intend to support this particular nomination.
I'm going to get you, but Ms. Holterfield had her hand up, then I'm going to go with Mr. Kurtz.
I just wanted to point out there is one other particular person that did apply for this position that had to be a Democrat. And based on the question, what you believe the role of the trustee and commissioner board, and how do you envision carrying out the responsibilities of the role. And that really, I think is extremely important, because the way that it was answered was the Board of Review members meet with anyone who wishes to appeal their property tax in daily hearings July 1 through September 11th, evaluate their property taxes and any evidence which they provide, advise people on gathering any needed additional evidence, evaluate evidence, meet with the Board of Review, make recommendations of changes and any necessary assessment corrections. I would also prepare appraisal and analysis needed to determine multiplier sales ratio studies, process homestead exemptions, and any performance needed for special projects. So that really spoke to me a little bit more so than the application of Mr. Williams. Again, being that I do work in this field, we have a lot more foreclosures and many other issues that are causing the values to be a little bit more challenging, because there are so many other criterias that home sellers are having to go through in order to meet the requirements of the Board of Review, and in order to lower their taxes if that's what they are concerned over. Someone that has been in this field giving advice and helping them through those, those issues, I think is, I just think qualifications under these circumstances are extremely important. Maybe Mr. Williams meets the criteria that's based on state statute, but shouldn't we look to try to exceed the criteria?
Mr. Curtis.
It's obvious to me that some board members are privy to more information than others. There's obviously still some confusion within the board as to the reasons that Mr. Weibel opened up the testing process. I was one of those that was privy to nearly 5 hours of information, along with some others here. I think, honestly, that I don't want to vote on something that many of the members don't have the information that I have. And I think they need to understand the seriousness of what took place and what is taking place at the Board of Review. I want to put this above politics, above party, above gender. This talks about performance. And so what I'd like to do, if it's okay with this board, is to defer both these nominations to a closed session. Now, Mr. Weibel had a closed session scheduled a couple of weeks ago. But because of the way the resolution was worded, we could not continue that closed session. I would like Mr. Weibel, with the approval of this board, to reinstitute another closed session with the correct resolution so that we can be privy to the exact information as to why I am so adamant about my stance here. I want it to be fair because 2 years ago, as I said, I had unwavering support for Mr. Williams. And so my motion now is to defer both these nominations to a closed session so that we may give each and every one of these board members the opportunity. Now, they were offered the opportunity by Mr. Jenkins on an email to everyone on this board to come in. He was willing to spend nights and weekends to explain to each and every single board member individually or 2 or 3 at a time exactly what has taken place here. And so I'm not going to expand on the information right now. But my motion is now, and I would hope for a second, to defer this so that we all on this board gets the full information as to why I feel the way I feel.
Is there a second?
I'd like a second.
Second by Mr. Mitchell. Discussion on the motion to defer this to the Committee of the Whole with a properly designed...
On both appointments.
On both appointments. Designed notice of closed meeting. Sorry, it's getting late. My sugar's running low. Mr. Quisenberry speaking to the motion to defer. And I will get to you, Mr.
I intend to. There was a previous COW meeting where I believe we attempted to go into closed session to discuss this topic. And at the time, we decided we could not discuss it in closed session. And my understanding was the chair was going to look into whether we could do that or not, and I'd like to know if there was information regarding that.
And I addressed that with the chair, and he got an opinion, I believe, from the state's attorney that the provision, the section that we were doing it under was not the correct section. And so if we did it under the correct section of the Open Meetings Act, theoretically it could be done. It's always to the discretion of the board.
So I did understand that from the state's attorney's office, but I did not understand whether we identified a correct section that would apply.
We did.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Weibel says that we did. Mr. Carter, speaking to the motion to defer.
Yeah. But I have a question first. What's the point if we can't go by the statute? Now, this is unbelievable. The statute plain to state what the deal is. Now, if we're not going by the statute, then what are you going to go by? When you defer, what are you going to do? Still go by the, that is, you're going against the law right here. You have a statute to tell you what is wrong and what is right, and you can't do that. Oh, come on. Lord have me. What's wrong?
Again, Mr. James, speaking on the motion to defer.
I don't know if I can support a motion to defer at this time. The chair has always come to us with a lot of different appointments across the board. We base it on the information we have at hand. Like I've heard all here all night, he makes the decision, we vote it up or down. In most cases, it flies. You can try and take politics out of this. It's not going to be taken out. I at this point, think most people in this room already know how they're going to vote. Deferring it and delaying it and talking about it, in my estimation, isn't going to make a whole big change. Right. So I'm not going to support the motion to defer.
Mr. Mitchell. I thought you had your hand up. I'm sorry. Mr. McGinty.
I am going to support the motion to defer. I think it's a good one because I don't know the details, and I think that as board members, we should, before we make a decision like this. You know, I can vote, yeah, I think I know how I'm going to vote. It could just be random, but come on. You know, I think that this is an opportunity to, and I think it's a good idea, get into closed session, find out some details. That's why we go into closed session, talk about personnel issues. We can do that. Spending a little bit more time on this, because I think that universally people seem to think that this is pretty important. So I'd like to dig on this and figure out exactly what the best decision is, because I don't know at this point. I think a motion to defer is a very good one. Let's get on with it.
Mr. Langenheim.
I seriously doubt whether taking more time to stew over this is going to cause anybody to change their minds. Deferring it is a way of avoiding a decision. We have to make a decision. And I would plead with all of you not to vote to defer if you do not plan to devote serious study, further study, to this matter, which has been contentiously discussed for several weeks now.
Mr. Richards.
I'm going to support the motion to defer. We've had a little bit of discussion at the Democratic caucus. We've had a couple memos on Wayne Williams. We've basically heard nothing on Steve Bantz. So I think that we can only benefit from actually talking about what's going on in the board review and more than generalities, and bringing it up and talking about where we actually are with the board review and what we're actually talking about here.
I know the chair, when you're chairing a committee, you're not normally supposed to say anything. If the board will indulge me, Mr. Kurtz said something that I thought was very interesting, which piqued my interest. He said he spent 5 hours getting information in a session. 5 hours is a lot of information. I certainly have never, and maybe it's my own fault, but I don't have 5 hours worth of information on this issue. And I guess I'm personally fascinated by what possible information there is that's worth 5 hours. And my own view is that if there's 5 hours of information, I want to know it before I vote on this, and maybe my own negligence in not meeting with Mr. Jenkins, but I, for one, think I need that information to make a decision on both of these candidates, else I'm not doing my due diligence, and I'm obligated to do that. Other comments from board members? On the motion to defer, Mr. Alex.
guess I'd like to go on record as saying in the final analysis, I don't really care who the people are on the Board of Review. I care whether the Board of Review is doing the job it needs to be doing for the citizens and the taxpayers of Champaign County. And if some additional discussion will help enlighten myself as well as other board members about what the situation is exactly with the Board of Review, what is broken, what needs to be fixed, and whether fixing it requires replacement of the current members or not, I think that would be beneficial. So I will support the motion to defer.
Any further comments? All those in favor of the motion to defer signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Weibel.
I'll try to be there. All right, we have one item left.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Point of order. Do we need to defer the other item as well?
The motion was actually for both. Yeah.
Thank you.
Who, me?
Let's move adoption of resolution number 8177.
So moved.
Can you do a better job than that, Mr. James? I'm about reading it.
Whatever you said, I'll go with that.
Let's try your reading today.
You got to read it.
Oh, I gotta read it? Okay.
What are you reading?
Adoption of resolution number 8117, approving FY 2012 wage reopener addendum to FOP Corrections Collective Bargaining Agreement.
Second.
Moved by Mr. James, second by Mr. Holyfield. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there any new business? Seeing none, we're adjourned.